And you mentioned a couple times discussing premarital counseling. Just tell me a little bit about how premarital counseling works and how you found that it works with couples.
You know, I think the inventory I usually use will give sort of a distortion index based on answers, and kind of let myself as the counselor know how skewed they're looking at the relationship, meaning they think everything's great or they're a little more pessimistic. So it allows me to deal with some situations that they might not have anticipated, especially with a blended family. It allows the counselor, through their experience, to just talk about some of the stumbling blocks that blended families will have that really aren't discussed a whole lot.
What are some of the? I'm sorry. What are some of these stumbling blocks that can come up?
One of the big ones is thinking that just because you've gone through a difficult situation that you won't make the same mistakes again, and without really identifying where those problems arose and how can you maybe communicate better or handle your anger better or resolve conflict better, you're really going to end up in the same place with your second or with your blended family. Another one, like we talked about, is how do you define what your roles are as a parent? If your stepchildren are very young, you may have more of a disciplinarian role as they grow older. If you're marrying into a family with 12, 13, 14-year-old stepkids, you're probably not going to be the disciplinarian, because that will create a lot of animosity in that situation. But premarital counseling can oftentimes work through some of those issues of what is the husband's role with the kids, what is the wife's role with the kids. Another big one is the ex-spouse. With visitation and different holidays, how that might be switching off, there can be some animosity with how much control the ex-spouse has over your scheduling, if it's vacations, if it's holidays, if it's when you get to go away for the weekend. And those are things that you can start talking about in premarital counseling and get some ideas about maybe how to deal with those situations. Depending on if it's the second, the second marriage, or it might be a third or a fourth marriage where there's multiple kids from different situations. Unfortunately, the stumbling blocks can be endless. But the premarital counseling also opens a door to a relationship with a counselor, so that if problems when problems do arise in the family, you have that relationship established, and you can go back and seek some more input.
Okay. How far in advance do you think premarital counseling should take place?
Pardon?
How far in advance do you think the premarital counseling should take place with a couple? I think for at least 6 months before the date of the wedding. With a blended family, it might even be further out. You want to, if some situations come up in counseling that need some work, you want to give yourself the time without the pressure of a wedding coming up maybe 6 weeks away or a month away. If you give it enough time and some situations come up, or maybe you even bring the children in to get their input, you have enough time to work some of those situations out. Okay. Before we run out of time today, is there anything else that you kind of like to touch on regarding premarital counseling, blended families, parenting, anything in general?
I think just there's a saying that the difference between expectation and reality is always misery. And if you go into a second marriage and people are often very happy and very excited about their upcoming marriage, and depending on the research you look at, it takes about 7 years of marriage to really create a cohesive blended family. And many blended families fail within the first 2 or 3 years. So they haven't had the realistic expectation of how long and how difficult it's going to be. And I think with the correct preparation and realistic expectations, you can be successful and have a marriage or family that comes together. Okay.
I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us a little bit about this subject today. I know it's a pretty popular topic out there, especially on our website, DadsDivorce.com, with fathers, joining with another family and also still having to deal with their ex-spouse as well as their children from their first marriage. So thanks again for joining us today. And once again, what counseling center are you from again? I just want to plug your website real quick. Sure, I'm with the Chicago Christian Counseling Center.
Okay. And what's the website?
ChicagoChristianCounseling.org.
Okay, and we'll put that website up on that screen. So if anybody out there in the Chicago area would like to seek a premarital counseling or counseling for other issues with them, they feel free to contact the center. I'm Stephanie McCracken with Divorce Today on DadsDivorce.com. Thanks for tuning in.